Well, hey everyone, how you doing today? Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, we've had a very interesting announcement from the U.S. Navy concerning the UFO, UAP, AAV situation. They've decided apparently to draft some new guidelines to allow aviators and other Navy personnel to report these objects. And this is from an article on the Politico.com site yesterday. They're drafting these new guidelines to create a new reporting system to allow witnesses to these unexplained aerial phenomena and underwater phenomena to now report these instead of feeling like they have to keep it under wraps and not talk about it forever. And I actually think this is kind of significant because if you remember, we've recently had on our YouTube channel here, we've had members of the Nimitz 2004 group. We had Kevin Day, Gary Voorhees, Jason Turner, and PJ Hughes, who all described from their various vantage points, either on the Princeton or the Nimitz, within the USS Nimitz strike group, their vantage point on the events of November 2004, where multiple objects were seen around the carrier group for a period of a week or so. Now, we heard from 4 of them so far, because these 4 didn't sign NDAs, and if they were told not to talk about it, they didn't listen, and they're retired now, and they're talking about it. But the interesting aspect of this is that there probably are many more witnesses to the Tic Tac events of November 2004, because if you think of how many people are involved in the different systems on these different ships in radar, electronics, communication, aviation. We've also heard obviously from Dave Fravor and 1 or 2 others. But by my estimate, and talking to Kevin Day and others, there must be hundreds of people that were aware of these Tic Tac events. If you remember, Kevin Day said that when he went into one of the rooms where there were officers who would have known about what was going on with the Tic Tac since they had been visible for a few days, he said there was this eerie feeling of quiet and this sense of bewilderment, like they didn't know what they were dealing with and nobody was talking about it. So if you go up and down the chain of command, there must be hundreds of people who know about these Tic Tac events, who were witnesses to it on the ship at the time, or heard about it later, or part of the communication systems. After all, we're told that several groups of unidentified people came on board at different times to take the data bricks and erase the optical drives and remove the data that showed that these events had happened. So, if there are hundreds of people that know about it, will they come forward now that the Navy is slowly changing their policy towards this? Because before it was, this never happened, sign this NDA, and you won't talk about what didn't happen. And now apparently it's going to be a fleet-wide system for reporting unidentified aircraft. Now it's interesting because these are aircraft that can go, apparently up to 24,000 miles an hour, make right angle turns at super high speeds, can go underwater, and even go into outer space. So calling them an aircraft is kind of an understatement. But the interesting thing about it is that this policy change apparently comes from requests for information from congressional members and staff. So apparently the Navy really had to do this because they've been giving briefings by senior naval intelligence officials, as well as aviators. That would probably be Commander Fravor and others, about aviation safety. So we can see behind the scenes that something is definitely going on here. The TTSA group, Chris Mellon, Luis Elizondo, and others have been putting pressure on members of Congress they've probably been giving them briefings and are telling them, hey, you guys need to know about this. This is an aircraft aviation safety issue. In 2004, we're told that the entire ADEX combat exercise had to be canceled because of these tic tacs, one of which moved to the cap point, which is where the aircraft go while they're waiting. It's sort of a waiting area for aircraft for staging the exercises, but it's secret. No one else is supposed to know what each individual aircraft's cap points are. But in this case, 40 miles away, the tic tac was already there. They canceled the exercise. So obviously, these objects are interfering with naval exercises. Probably the Air Force is experiencing this too. But we're really seeing a slow change in policy here. We've also had on the show recently David Noble Whitecrow. We've done 5 episodes with him about his experiences during Operation Dominique, the USS Finch, and he's continually told us about when he talked to the officers on board the Finch and later the Nimitz. Remember, he's a naval artist working for their CIC center, their intelligence center, and he's hearing this scuttlebutt, as he calls it, from these officers about these objects, about the targeting of these objects using ship's radar and so forth. We learned from him in the last episode that some of his other shipmates on the USS Finch had to sign NDAs before they even left port, that they wouldn't talk about what they saw. They had to turn in their cameras. Now, David doesn't know why he wasn't asked to sign these. Perhaps he was just below deck at the time. It's not really done in a systematic way, the way the NDAs are gathered from the sailors. But in any case, this is a shift from not being allowed to talk about it, from being dissuaded from talking about it, from being told it's going to hurt your chances of promotion and your career in the Navy. Perhaps now people will feel a little more comfortable coming forward. We don't know. But the main thing that this signals to me is that what disclosure, this thing that we've been talking about, this idea for a couple decades now of the government telling us what they know about the UFO phenomena, instead of telling us that it's simply swamp gas or flocks of geese or misidentifications of Venus or meteorites. I'm just down the hill from where the Condon Committee worked at the University of Colorado here in Boulder. It's just about a mile up the road from me, where they concluded in 1969 or so that there was nothing to this phenomenon. It wasn't worth the military's investigation, that everyone should just move on from the limited number of cases that they studied. And now we know that this whole thing was kind of a smokescreen for a deeper concern about what these objects are, who's in them, what the agendas are, and where these objects and entities are coming from. We learned the same sort of thing from Richard Doty recently with my interview with him, which was quite revealing and astonishing, I thought, at the UFO MegaCon 2019 in Laughlin, Nevada. Richard Doty told us, retired Air Force counterintelligence agent, told us that we asked him after his talk, how many other people did what you do, Richard? And I mean, he's quite open about this now. He said he was one out of 122 other agents that did similar sorts of things. Now, it wasn't all entirely devoted to UFOs, but some of it was. So that means Richard Doty's come forward, but what about the other 121 people who served in his unit? So I think what we're going to see here is that disclosure is not going to be a single event, perhaps as Dolan and Zabel suggested in their book After Disclosure. It's not going to be a single event where the president shows up in the East Room of the White House and announces on a Friday afternoon that the government has knowledge of the existence of extraterrestrials. It's not going to be like that at all. It's going to be a slow disclosure, like a process, like Luis Elizondo suggested recently, where we get a little bit at a time, agency by agency, using this sort of very generic ambiguous language, calling them unidentified aircraft. You know, the objects that went over the Strategic Command bases and the missile bases in the 1960s and 70s, the so-called Northern Tier incidents that happened at Minot and Word-Smith and Loring Air Force bases across the United States. Those objects that were detected on radar and visually identified by people on the ground. Remember, we've had Gary on this channel before who saw an object, a huge, brilliant object, lift off by a missile silo at Minot, near Minot Air Force Base in the early 1970s. That actually burned him and the other guy in the security alert truck. Those objects were referred to as unidentified helicopters. So I find it kind of funny that they're still using the same sort of language. Unidentified helicopters. Yeah, that can go straight up at hundreds of miles an hour. And now they're being referred to as unidentified aircraft. Luis Elizondo even makes a kind of a joke about this. He said, they don't have a tail number or a flag. In some cases, not even a tail. They don't have a tail. There's no flight surfaces on these objects. Nothing. They're completely smooth, completely symmetrical. So anyway, disclosure seems to be a process. Agency by agency is going to slowly turn the dial on this in the direction of talking about it. And the upshot of all this is, it seems to me that instead of just having 4 or 5 witnesses from these incidents coming forward, remember this also affected the USS Roosevelt off the coast of Florida in 2015. That's where the flying squares came from, the object that are apparently seen in the Go Fast TTSA video. There are numerous incidents where these interactions are taking place, and now we're told they're not going to be covered up. People won't have to sign NDAs. So that means we're probably going to be having a slow drip of witnesses over the next coming years, just like the ones we've seen on this YouTube channel. More are going to come forward. And as some of the Nimitz guys told me, people in the military often follow what other members of their services are doing. So if we have some of them coming forward, perhaps the rest will feel like this is the proper thing to do. After all, what we're talking about is telling the truth here, the truth about our reality. As long as we're not under some immediate national security situation, that is the proper thing to do. And I think, hey, we all deserve it. You deserve it. I deserve it. We all deserve overtime to know what's going on and to stop all these charades and these lies and these campaigns to vilify and ostracize and ridicule people that have experienced these phenomena and try to convince them that all they saw was a meteorite or a flock of geese or something ridiculous like that. So anyway, I'm interested to hear what you think about this. Let me know, and we'll be seeing what happens. We'll see you in the next video. Take care for now, and bye.